It's a real pleasure and honor to have Jim Daniels and Dian Sousa, both wonderful poets, back on the show. Jim will read first and then Dian. Jim Daniels' 30th poetry collection is Gun Shy, published by Wayne State University Press in 2021. His next fiction collection, The Luck of the Fall, Michigan State University Press, and a chapbook, The Human Engine at Dawn, Wolfson Press, will be published in 2023. A native of Detroit, he lives in Pittsburgh and teaches in the Alma College Low Residency MFA program. Here's a brilliant poet, Jim Daniels.
Thank you, Harry. It's good to be back on the show. And since I read poems from Gunshy, I think last time I was on, I thought I would read some poems from this new chapbook that's coming out, The Human Engine at Dawn. So I'll just jump right in here. The first poem I'd like to read is called Today My Bank Sent Me a Birthday Message. You know, as you were on the internet, like we are right now, sometimes you get these automated messages that try to act like they know who you are or what's going on or to wish you a happy birthday. And so I got this message when I was dealing with my mother's failing health, and I wasn't having a very happy birthday. So here it is. Today, my bank sent me a birthday message and spelled happy with 3 A's. It said, to the one and only James. It said, hooray, and get the party started. My mother was sleeping when I called to wish that she might wish me a happy birthday. Hospice had just left. When she is sleeping, you do not wake her. She never spelled words with extra letters to try and be someone more hip in her neat, measured script I will never see again. Once we combined our cash into a CD when the rate was over 10%. Free China, too, and she let me keep it all. Her new medicine causes constipation, so they gave her a laxative. My father, 91, fumbles for the word laxative. Everyone tries to make her comfortable. Last time she was lucid, she offered to give my daughter some cash for a trip. My mother thinks she still has some cash, thinks she could go with her. Semi-lucid, as good as it gets, a blessing and a curse, lucidity. I've got a million phrases to toss over the phone lines to keep static at bay. My mother is blind. We see. We are all waiting. It's your special day that's all about you, the bank says. They no longer give away dishes. Old stack of those silver-rimmed plates once tipped out of my cabinet and smashed on the floor. I still have the smaller plates and the shallow bowls that are frankly the wrong size for anything. Plus, not microwave safe. My father fashioned Braille buttons on the microwave for her at an earlier point in her demise. She is failing, dying, we call it many things. Got a birthday check in your pocket? The bank asks. There are many Jameses in this ill-formed world. When I used to call back in the great state of clarity, my mother would ask, is this the famous James Raymond Daniels? It's a joke between us. I've always been Jim. I will call again tomorrow when she is awake, and it is no longer my birthday. I believe she will be alive. I will never see her again. She has not seen me for years. These last days, she is not even one happy. Interest rates went down, as everyone knows. Why am I so certain? Maybe I should make the drive one more time to hold her hand and play along with the scriptless prayers. My father talks about a D-Day special on TV, new footage of the blood and horror from other countries put together with our bloody American footage, all for my birthday. Blood and money together. He calls me Jimmy. The bank wants to know if I'm running low on celebration cash. Oh, bank, I want to say, but it says do not reply. To protect my privacy, some pictures in the message have not been downloaded. I download confetti, in a birthday cupcake. It looks like gingerbread or bran with a swirl of frosting on top and a candle photoshopped into being lit. Bank, my mother would have told you I want devil's food for my birthday. Bank, why are you such a bummer on my birthday? Party on, keep on going, trademark, copyright. Bank, I'm not very HAAAPPY. The cupcake floats in white space. It would sit nicely on one of those small plates. My mother says, do not reply today. Then it's a candle and burn down to nearly nothing. I dare not blow. And this shifts gears a little bit. This will be the title poem of this new little chapbook. Chapbook, for those of you who don't know, is like a mini book of poems, about 32 pages, I think. And this flips back, and a lot of these poems flip back and forth from, my growing up to being a parent myself. And this poem does that exactly. It moves back and forth between, I was raised Catholic and I was an altar boy when I was a kid, to taking my daughter down to the Greyhound station for her to go back to Washington, D.C., where she lives. And I'm reading this poem. It's a title poem, but it's for this new collection. But it's also here in Pittsburgh. It's snowing for the first time this year, today. The human engine at dawn. I drove my daughter downtown to Greyhound in the New Year's first snow. Because 6 a.m., flakes ticking hard off bare streets. The scruff of love that hurts without meaning to. In half-light, 2 altar boys drag boots through light. Fresh snow behind the grade school yet to be plowed. On their way to 6 a.m. Mass to prop up Father Andrews with his bald insect head and stick frame stooped beneath heavy robes. We rang bells at random to keep him upright. Those dark souls kneeling in grim semi-dark rose from the dead for communion. My daughter's watch kept me on edge over snowy roads, the weighted freight of her battered suitcase, the dashboard's dim-lit instruments. We are in this together, my daughter and I, my childhood friend and I, through the snow gathering, regardless of belief or love or traffic. A lot can happen at 6 a.m. or nothing at all. Blessed are the sleepers. Look up and see the cracked chandelier, 6 a.m., forever up there. If you are alone and awake at 6 a.m., forever feels stamped with the authority of silence and ceremony. All well and good to say stop making sense as some pronouncement from on high, but even that is impossible if you're making sincere attempts. So sincere attempts in the land of unbelievers don't run out of gas. We believe in gauges, warning lights, and the human engine. Snow, 6 a.m. A bus revs up, ready to take her. The stiff arms of trees spread and tremble, like Father Andrews giving his blessing. We didn't know it would be his last Mass. Do this in memory of me. Forgive me, Father, for ringing the bells this morning, and every morning I am awake, this early or this late. When will I see her again? My daughter breathes smoke, waves half goodbye, hurries forward and away. Hard flakes circle in the wind between buildings. And this is another Greyhound bus poem, which is the connection. Put all these little threads together in terms of the reading. So this poem is called Hounds, and it's kind of like my history of riding Greyhound buses, or at least some of them. Greyhound stations and buses reek with cigarette ghosts of American nerve. Orange plastic seat rigor mortis, where I'd spit in hieroglyphic sweat. I sat here in 1973, there in 1976, here in 1981, there in 1984, there again in 84. After a run of luck, the luck ran out the radiator in Joplin, Missouri, so back on the hound in 89. Early 90s, stumbling out for midnight chicken delight, diesel fumes and raw, unearthed regret. Anxious soldiers and imposing grandmothers, gum chewers and thumbsuckers, unshaven, aftershaven, half-sticky slime on railings and poles, and the bathrooms. Schedules and delays and wide sways and the laps and claps, and a drilling patient hum of the sacred against the scared. I'm weeping like the stranded opera singer, though I don't plan to ride another one ever. Today, a woman drenched in multiple layers of filth, surrounded by wavy cartoon lines of stench, catches my eye outside Kroger's, wanting to tell me the frayed story of a brother in Chicago needing a brain transplant. And was I a participating surgeon? I paraphrase. I digress. She reminds me of August 1983 and the gentle rocking of a large woman who settled and spilled halfway across my seat. I was returning from Madison, Wisconsin, where I'd paid for half an abortion, heading back to Findlay, Ohio to move out of her place. Her boyfriend was coming back. I'll stop there. Like I stopped on that bus, heaving and blubbering into the woman's fleshy shoulder while she patted my knee. And an old man from the next row clapped a hand on my shoulder and handed me a chicken leg in a surprisingly thick embossed napkin. We chewed in silence all the way to Toledo. Amen.
Amen.
So, that's one of the journeys there. And this, I want to read another poem about my mother when she was young and vibrant, and this poem focuses on, she was a nurse, and I was one of 5 kids, and she worked one day a week to get out of the house, and while my grandmother watched us, and it was like the stay of freedom for her in many ways. I mean, we loved her, but we weren't always the greatest kids. So this poem is called Nursing the Wounds. My mother walked to work in her nurse's uniform, white cap proudly pinned over her bouffant, down the dirt path through the field behind arrow tool and die, a narrow strip of weeds someone forgot to develop between 8 Mile and the cinder block wall where our subdivision began. The only nurse any of us knew in that foaming sea of housewives calling to their schools of gritty kids hiding in those weeds. The only ones who wore hats anywhere near that odd were the troop of nuns at the convent across from the Dairy Queen, shrunk into their black habits that hid everything. My mother's hat, like a giant bleached butterfly, twisted and starched into place. If you were to see her striding down 8 Mile Road in white everything toward the clinic next to Stan's party store, you might have paused at the mirage emerging from the green sprawl with a confident pace of a woman getting a paycheck and leaving 5 kids behind to be watched by her mother. Oh, she didn't make much, I know now. Like I know now that the hoots and whistles from passing cars were not due to her angelic aura. My mother, with her own stethoscope tucked into her straw purse like a diamond necklace, not a blessed rosary, though she had one or two of those. Her laugh cut with cigarettes and kindness and beer. What happened at work we never knew. All she had for us were Band-Aids in her pockets and dum-dum suckers they gave to kids who did not cry. Once, riding my bike to Stan's after delivering my newspapers, I saw her heading to work at the clinic that needed no proper name, to cover for a nurse out getting divorced, I later learned. She did a little move in the air that involved hips and hands, and some ecstatic recreation of something no nun was allowed to recreate. I may have flushed or pedaled harder to make the turn onto Topher Street past the trailer park so she would not see me seeing her. Skipping over the unseen past, the abuse she never spoke of. Memory, that unreliable friend that whispered her troubles to the wind, nearly unpinning the shelter of that cap, despite a lifetime of hearing hearts beat. All those deep breaths we took, while she listened. So, why don't I let my father weigh in here? My parents were big bowlers, and bowling was very big in the Detroit area. Detroit, Cleveland, St. Louis, Missouri, they're some of the bowling meccas. And to build on that last poem, the house of 5 kids, I shared a bedroom with my 3 brothers. There was 2 bunk beds in that room. It was hard to get any privacy, so I accompanied, as this poem will explain, my father's bowling ball into the closet in order to talk to my girlfriend at the time. And, it was one of those first romances, and we didn't know what the heck we were doing. So that kind of plays off of my father and his bowling scores. Ode to my father's bowling ball. In the hall closet, its hard gray plastic case, intimate seat beneath hangered coats, phone cord yanked taut from the kitchen as I repeated the tick of "I love you," while we proofread the minutia of our day for errors of tone, syntax, and doubt. No household bench, box, or appliance could bear the weight of those words, the fetal crouch of first love. My father bowled on Tuesdays with the Knights of Columbus and mixed doubles one Saturday a month with my mother, who threw a house ball, a bowling ball the bowling alley provided. For years, we obeyed his winged trophy clock. He worshipped the black orb I sat on, solid egg I warmed, inhaling scented tissues in a pocket of my mother's long green coat. I love you forever. I'll never talk to her again or wave across the street at the same time. I will not let her sign my yearbook or sit next to me in study hall. Yes, I love you forever and ever. And when are your parents going out? Are you wearing those hot red panties? And yes, I'm sorry about Patty, both Patties and Jane before you. And Sandra, you count Sandra. Sorry, yes, forever. I swear in my father's ball oiled with strike potion and split repair salve. My ear burned against the black receiver. My father yelled, "Get off the phone!" 2 exclamation points. But we hadn't yet resolved the lunch hour exchange with the ghost of an early kiss. I wiped tears on winter sleeves and phone books, canceled checks and vacuum cleaner instructions, imagining the long curve of the black ball, the explosion of pins, the trophy I'd win by not getting her pregnant. My father recorded his scores in neat pencil, not trusting the league's Mimeo sheets. He had faith his average would rise forever, but it'd only be months before our cheap matching rings were unexchanged. Was that stone a cat's eye, the name of a marvel? In the closet, photo albums awaiting clever captions, not forthcoming. In that dark, color still faded. Church envelopes feuded with cigarette cartons. One day, the trophy clock broke. Time popped out to leave a gaping hole in forever. Winged bowler's shrine torn down by true believers with a strict interpretation of penetration and fidelity. He never won another trophy that fancy, despite a 700 series just last year at 89. I haven't seen her in 35 years. I still believe in phone cords, black and white prints, and the rotary dial and wall mounts. Every morning, my father tumbled out to the car with a paper bag lunch and desire for one more smoke, one more slurp of coffee. On Tuesday nights, he rolled out the door to Bronco or Pastime or Frontier Lanes. I ran my fingers over his initials, RD, etched into the ball, anchor in that smooth, blind world. Instructed to neatly fill in boxes, I strayed beyond the legible. Worse than confession, I had no heart-on for the priest. Penance changed daily in words to prayers. Holy Mary, the Lord is with thee, isn't he? Alone in that closet, a toll booth where I paid with slugs of promises to the winged one who radiated light from the lofty pedestal, even if neither of us could stand still for the pose to stick. When they moved, trophies stumbled into a box by the curb, but the ball made the cut. Dad, remember when you were in love with Mom? What stories did you tell her, Mr. R.D.? The closet of dust mops, rags, abandoned good intentions, 78 RPMs thick in their brown musty sleeves. Forever, the only room in our house without a crucifix, a miracle that he's alive, bowling still. Bowling balls last forever. I found one in my front yard once, lime green, dropped from outer space or a passing vehicle. A little gaudy for our taste, eh, Dad? What time is it, Dad? Dad, what's your take on forever? You still keeping score? And I'll finish with one shorter poem. Different from the others. It brings in my son too. I got two kids who are now obviously adults, but this is called Gospel. And I come from Detroit, but occasionally I get out and live in Pittsburgh, but occasionally I get out into the natural world, and this is about one of those times. And like I said, I'll finish with this one, and I look forward to our next reader. Gospel. I saw the great blue heron today, still above the flat horizon, staring as I passed on my bike. Some mornings, I admit, I scared into rising just to see those wide whispering wings spread over grapevines clenched into earth in bright green rows. Nothing is here for my amusement. The heron fishes in the small stream where the narrow road turns. Easy pickings. Today, I don't scare it. My son dropped sticks off the narrow bridge into that stream 20 years ago. A man now, and I'm sad for it on days like this. Thousands of miles away, he sings songs I've never heard. Look, I'd say to him and point. He's not here for my amusement, getting on with it, screwing up, muddling through his own life. We used to watch Current carry those twigs till they disappeared. Sometimes it's so quiet I can hear wings. The heron straight graceful pin above flatlands along the stream. To dig our roots deeper or to fly? How to hide nests, protect our young? My son is tall somewhere out there. We build nests one thin stick at a time. The sticks never disappear, not really. I don't want to live far from water. My amusement is finite. Leaves on the vines redden and wither. Elsewhere, fruit ferments into wine. It's an old story, I know, but teach me the words, my son. Yeah, that's it for me. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Jim. Your poetry is wonderful. I love the personal aspect of your poetry. You're like an all-American person with your mother poems, your father poems, the bowling. I used to set pins when I was a kid, and you always watch out for somebody double bowling on you. And also the Greyhound bus. I took the Greyhound so many times across America. We have a few minutes before Diane comes. Could you take one poet from the past and just talk a little bit about him or her and why you like that poet?
Sure. Yeah, well, coming from Detroit, I have to give a shout out to Philip Levine, who actually was the exact age of my parents. He was born in 1928. So in Detroit, not that far from where my parents lived. I never met him, but the reason Phil spent his early years off and on working in auto plants in Detroit. And actually, he was the first poet I ever read that wrote about that life. And that was a life I was surrounded by. My father worked for Ford Motor Company. My grandfather worked for Packard Motor Company. I worked for Ford to pay my way through college, along with my brother. My other brother spent his whole life working for Chrysler Corporation. So to write about that work that my family did, that my friends and neighbors did, to give it a kind of dignity and respect was really important and an inspiration for me as a writer myself.
Well, you also have that narrative strength. And Phil Levine, he ended up, where did he end up? Fresno? He's great. And on another subject, what would be a few of your favorite films from all time?
Oh, well, I guess going along with the blue collar stuff, the film Blue Collar, actually. Weren't you in that, Harry?
Yep.
But that was a wonderful film. And certain ones that I keep coming back to, I mean, they're other people's favorites too, but Chinatown, I've probably seen as much as any other film. And a recent film that I really liked a lot, Licorice Pizza. I just like films that focus in on character. I actually wrote and made a few independent films that nobody's ever seen. But if you go to Vimeo, you can actually see a couple of them. So yeah, I'm a big film buff, and that inspires my writing too. And in fact, writing screenplays helped me with my poetry in terms of making, and maybe you heard it in some of the poems I read, these sort of quick jump cuts really from one scene to another without any kind of transition between them. And I think I kind of got the confidence from that to kind of read between the lines, like when movies jump from one place with a group of one characters to another. And when the films are working, you jump, as a viewer, you jump right with them and make this sort of mental connection between them.
Well, we shot in Blue Collar. We stayed at the St. Regis on Grand Avenue. We used to hold up our store. I think it was Store's Beer. We'd say, "Here's to all the
Store's, yeah."
Yeah. And I remember we went to Detroit looking pretty, and we left looking raggedy. That was 1958. When downtown was somewhat raggedy. I don't know how it is these days, but I like the Jack Nietzsche music too at the beginning of that picture. But thank you.
It's very contagious. Yeah,
that's great. But your work is always fabulous. I always love listening to your poetry, and working class. I always love that too. And my heart is always with the working class people. My son is a forklift operator in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and so I'm always for the working class. So thank you once again, Jim Daniels. Our next poet is Dian Sousa. Dian Sousa is a poet and activist. Her poems have appeared in numerous journals, most recently including the Prairie Schooner, the Kelp Journal, the Banyan Review, Great Weather for Media, American Poetry Journal, the Gavia Brown Journal of Portuguese American Poetry, and Margins, a teaching anthology of Portuguese migrant and ethnic literature in North America. She has been nominated for 2 Pushcart Prizes. She is the recipient of a fellowship to the Disquiet Literary Program in Lisbon, Portugal. She is a former San Luis Obispo Poet Laureate, and has been the poet for all 5 SLO women's marches. She's the author of 4 books of poetry. Here's a marvelous poet, Dian Sousa.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I'm not. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, because I can barely hear me. Thank you, Jim, for your poems. I love them, and I wanted to say that in your first poem, when you were taking care of your dying mother, and I took care of mine also, and what I remember the most through all the grief and all that deepened me in taking care of her was one thing she said when she was so sick from cancer, barely able to talk. She said, well, at least I'm lucid. So I love that. But anyway, thank you for your poems. I love them. I'm going to ruin the whole reading series now with mine. This poem is called The Holiest Temples. The holiest temples are made of water. We remember this now. Though in the past we built them from stone, wood, brick. We even erected tiny bedside synagogues made of alabaster and kitchen counter mosques carved from cobalt and bone. We did notice, however, that the God we trapped inside seemed to grow more manifest when encased in marble. But no matter how large he grew, he always looked just like us, only thinner, humorless. He did not eat spaghetti or learn to swim. He was afraid of girls. The few who tried to talk to him said he was obsessed with stopping chaos, as if chaos were a secret weapon invented by the fuzzy old Soviets. He feared chaos would disguise itself like Bugs Bunny so easily did to the total befuddlement of Elmer Fudd and more often Daffy Duck. He feared chaos would put on a long wig and slip through the flimsy veil of separation, causing all insurance adjusters to adjust their buttons and belts until their clothes fell off, causing all pharmaceutical reps to rep the benefits of chicken and dumplings, causing all bank managers to issue a silky money made of ice cream. Do you want some more money? No, thank you, I'm stuffed. And soon we'd remember too that love is our solar system and beauty our constellation. And if we stare at each other long enough, the aurora borealis will break in a holy wave of hallelujah. He was scared that someone would say the word religion, but we would hear the word ocean. And then we would share bowls of spaghetti. An hour later, we would all go swimming, and he would be too afraid to follow. It's so odd reading on Zoom because I'm only looking at myself and it's delayed. So I kind of feel like I'm in a chamber on the moon. I just recently had to go back to work, and I worked in a retail store for my friend because her store was closing. And I hate that more than anything. Working retail, I think I'd rather have my teeth pulled out, or I think I'd rather have to run from rabid dogs because it's just crazy. This is called Working Retail Drunk. Rivers and streams pass by. The sea passes by and remains. This is how we must love it. Faithful and fleeting, I wed the sea. Albert Camus. I am too old to work retail, but it's the only job I can get where they might not notice right away that I am drunk. I drink fermented morning blackberries muddled with a tuning fork so I can smile, so I can sound melodic when I ask if the customer would like a bag even though what I really want to ask is if they dream in color or in terror, or if the credit card they are using was issued by the Bank of the Abyss. I am too old to work retail, but the cap came off my bottom tooth and my country does not like me, let alone care about my dental health, even though it takes out ads in the art magazine, which I don't remember subscribing to, telling me to fix my teeth or die. I will die, even if I get a new tooth. They never mention this part. But my country calls my point of view pessimistic, and I do still have a flea's breath of vanity left. So I agree to work in a store down by the ocean selling fuzzy mermaid beer cozies and endangered pelican coasters to boiling inland tourists who hate me because I was born by the sea, have lived my entire drunk life giving my sloppy body to the sea, wildly, in love, unrequited. I do not tell the tourists any of this, but they seem to be able to smell it on me. I say smell because they never really look at me. I think it's because I am old and working retail, and they know why, but they bury it deep or leave it in the trunk of their car all the time. Even so, sometimes when I drink too many fermented blackberries before my morning shift, I think, what a muddled wonder I am, with my dark, brambled breath and the cresting fog of my hair. In those rare, splendid seconds, I do have to ask myself, am I my own planet? My own illusion? If I am, why am I working retail? I answer, but I never believe myself because I'm drunk. I am too old to work retail, and I know it will destroy me quicker than my missing tooth. But the ocean suggests I drink more and stop worrying. She will devour me first. I know this because I love the ocean every day, unrequited. And she tells me how small I am, how fragile, how she will break my teeth and bones to bits like ocean glass, only not as pretty, not as moon-tinged. But there are days when I am not working retail, so I'm not quite as drunk, or maybe I'm drunker, and I answer the ocean, quietly, but optimistically. Maybe, someday, someone walking along the shore will find a few of the bits that used to be me. If I'm lucky, maybe I'll even find enough of me. Maybe they'll even find enough of me. Say, a fleck of expensive enamel or a spiral of ear bone. They will put the old bits of me in a fancy baggie, take me home, and lie me on their dresser. And on the swirling blue shore of night, if they are inebriated and dreamy, and I hope they are, they will hear that drunken wisp of ocean, that indelible souvenir which has always been my song. And they will wake up in love, besought, stewed, stinging. And now, I'll just keep going with the ocean. I'll just keep swimming in that direction. I went to Catholic school. I begged my parents to let me go because I wanted the book bag and the uniform. I said it was because I was afraid of my soul, but I was like 8, so, you know. But the one thing I learned there, which is one of the only things I know, is that we're 95% seawater. It blew my little mind. So this is called 95%. You go down to the ocean and you don't come back the same. No one really notices at first. You just seem a little sleepy. Or perhaps the word is meditative. Because every now and again you say something lovely, but troubling, like, take off your terrible clothes and let's go sleep in the curl of a long blue wave. And then you begin to eat nothing but salt and shaved ice. You don't lose weight, though. You grow larger. At first, no one notices this either, except the woman with a silver crest of hair who had a stroke 16 years ago after her oldest son disappeared at sea. On her slow daily walk up the street, she stops you at your mailbox and stares at you for a long time. She's seen this before. She lays a careful hand on your arm. Something vast and deep is flooding her cells, but all she can say is, "Did you get a haircut?" You no longer know if you did or not. So you smile and shrug and whistle so high it starts raining. The rain beats against your white shirt until the buttons squeal off and the sleeves flap so hard it flies away from you. The woman claps and unzips her yellow coat, and you both become absolutely delighted by the bright flock of clothes beating their darts and inseams against the increasingly wild storm. And then you both lie down right there at the base of the mailbox, and neither one of you has to say it because both your bodies believe it. You need the water to cover every particle of these arid lives in which you could no longer breathe. You need the water to open up your skin. That's too small for you now. You need the rain to rejoin your bone-locked tributaries to something huge and vast and deep again. And you need it to happen now, before some well-intentioned person retrieves your pants from the telephone pole and makes you put them back on. I'm going to read this little poem. It's a three-parter, but I'm only going to read the first part because I no longer like the other two parts, but don't tell them. There are 6 million female lives lost in the world every year simply because they are female. Gloria Steinem. Party dress. I sleep with a terrible scream trapped in my bones. Mama, I was invited to a party. At the party, they played a game. The rules were this. All the women were pinned down and sewn into identical dresses. Some of us smiled, but it hurt. Ensnared in identical dresses, we were posed for pictures in front of a wall lined with whitewashed flags and obscene Boy Scouts. The dress was electric, eat this and die pink, laced with flesh-barred metallic threads, a heart-shaped peekaboo bodice, and a goddamn bunny tail. You could wear this dress in the desert, Mama, and burst like a blushing human Hindenburg. You could wear it in an elevator and conduct terrifying social experiments. You could wear it to time travel and be forced to dance on stage or be burned as a witch. Oh, Mama, I'm glad you weren't there, but I know you wore this kind of dress too. Maybe it didn't have a tail, but it bound you just the same. I forgot to say that I'm the only girl in my family, and I had older brothers. And I would find their Playboy magazine because I was a horrible tattletale and a snoop. And I would find whatever rotting fruit or vegetable I could find, and I would put it in the centerfold and then duct tape it and put it back where I found it. And then I would tell my mom, and I thought she would be outraged, but all she ever said was, "The devil loves tattletales." She tried to nip my little feminism in the bud, but she did not. And I'm going to close with this poem. It's really an Easter poem, but it's blue and sunny out here in California, so I don't really know what season it is. I mean, the Rite Aid by my house is, got pumpkins and mini cornucopias and snowmen, so I'm guessing it's Christmas, but, I can't really be sure. I think I'll just, I don't like the title of this poem because it harkens to a fundamentalism, which I don't adhere to, but I couldn't think of a better one. It's called Resurrection. And I don't really think I think you can be reborn every day. It's like the Bob Dylan song, "He not busy being born is busy dying." Resurrection. 1. A man is arrested, murdered, his body a slaughterhouse. Friends lay his corpse on the dirt floor of a cave. Sun comes up, moon, sun. His chest moves, heaves, breath returns. He opens a brown eye, moves a battered lip. He says the word love and comes back from the dead. It is miraculous for a while, but then it all turns weird, murderous. Men who talk like him, who are dark like him, are murdered. Children are murdered. Women ravaged, murdered, ravaged, murdered. Sun comes up. No one else comes back from the dead, especially not the women. If they do, no one admits it. Centuries pass. Only the clothes get easier, but not for the women. Men in brutal robes build a church on a hill. They kill more people. Murder, bugger, murder. They make a lot of money. 2. The headman on the hill, in a heavy brocade hat, eats a lamb and declares a holiday. They call it Easter. It sounds like Ishtar, but they deny it. 3. It is Easter. I arrange the orange lilies, bake a cake thick with lemon. I put the lilies and the cake on a craft platter edged in bunnies wearing blue sweaters. I take it outside. I leave the chipped platter in the gutter for the rats in the shadows and walk toward the forest. I never wave goodbye. Sun comes up, moon, sun. The further away I get, the less I remember. The less I remember, the more real I become. Earth, it blooms radiant. I hadn't noticed it before. It hurts, heals, blooms through the trunk of my body. My arms branch wide. Arms branched wide and open, I keep walking toward the forest. On the way to the forest, I stop at the ocean. I meet some women. The women looking out to sea tell stories I finally remember. The stories are wet. I dive into them, head first, barefoot. In full bloom, I say the word love and come back from the dead. Does it end here? No, it never does. 4. I say the word love and come back from the dead. Do you believe me? Don't tell anyone. Yes, it's miraculous, but I know it will turn weird. People will start dressing like me. They will demand that everyone churn their own butter. Everyone drink 100 proof Yukon Jack Canadian whiskey. Even kindergartners, flight attendants, even ulcerated district attorneys. People will starve and hallucinate. They will be cut up and murdered in my name. If you see me walking in the forest, hear me chanting the word love, chant with me. Then, please, go home. Don't tell anyone who you've seen. Do not mention my name. Just say love. Say it with your body risen in its truest language. Say it until it is in this deafened world heard, loved, until you are in this deadened world reborn, and the sun comes up. Sun, love, moon, love.
Oh,
Thank
beautiful reading.
Thank
I love that. That last poem was just fabulous. The vulnerability and the poignancy and the tenderness, you know, in that poem about love. And also I love your poems about the ocean and your commitment to the support of women. You know, I've always seen that in your work. Are you a surfer?
I am right now. I have been most of my life, and I go in the water a lot. But right now, I've played so much pickleball, I can't get. Pickleball has destroyed me, so I'm not surfing like I was.
How old were you when you first started surfing?
13, but I was in the ocean my whole life. My dad came from the Azores, and we would go clam digging. Well, he would. I would go body surfing. And I was just remembering that every single toy, Casper the Friendly Ghost, Chatty Cathy, every Barbie, every iteration of Barbie, all drowned. I threw them all off the Seal Beach Pier. So, yeah, all my life.
My son, he was a he grew up on the beach south of the pier in Santa Monica, and he started surfing when he was about 4 or 5. But you know, I've always seen your love of the ocean, and you're just a wonderful poet. What, as I asked Jim, could you take one poet from the past and just talk about him or her and what you like about that particular poet?
I would say that, and I feel like I was in Catholic school when I heard Lawrence Ferlinghetti's "And Christ Climbed Down," and it just amazed me, the sound of it, and the imagery in it, and I can see myself sitting in a pew in Catholic school and hearing that poem, and I know that cannot be true, but that's the way I remember it. That poem taught me so much about sound, and so I feel like that and Renaissance by, what's her name? The candle burns on both ends. Why am I not thinking of her name? I read her biography, Savage Beauty. Anyway, her Renaissance that I heard as a small child also it just drew me in. And I've always loved poetry. My dad, who had a 4th grade education, would quote bits of poetry to me. I don't know how he learned them, but I've always loved it.
Jim, you've taught for many years. What would you like to say to Diane about her poetry? And Diane, what would you like to say about Jim's?
Jim.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Go ahead, Diane.
I love the narrative in your poems. I love narrative and I love story, and to be able to thread the narrative in a long poem. And I'm so grateful to you for reading and writing longer poems, because I think that the tendency is now to write such short poetry. And I just, maybe you heard him too on NPR, Billy Collins with his little book of short poems. And it's hard for me to appreciate a short poem. I can, but I prefer not to. So I love where your poems come from and the story in them and the truth in them and the vulnerability too. So thank you. I'm honored to read with you.
Well, thank you, Diane. And I just, that's good. I'll take that.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I was in partly it's probably some coastal issue, but I was unfamiliar with your work, and so I'm just kind of blown away by hearing it for the first time, and just writing things down and wanting to read more of your work. It's just the power, the strength of the voice, and the surprising language and the passion behind them. Just it's some hard hitting stuff, and that's the kind of stuff I like. So thank you.
Thank you. I don't think anyone's ever heard of me or read my work, so you're not alone.
Diane, I asked Jim what his favorite movie or two was or were. My favorite since you've served, number one surfing film, Endless Summer, and number two, Blue Crush. I love Blue Crush. But what are a couple of your movies? The reason I like Blue Crush because the woman gets hurt, and how does she overcome that adversity and get back in the water? And it's very inspirational. What are one or two or three of your favorite poems, Diane, or not poems, movies?
Well, I too love Endless Summer and Five Summer Stories. But my all-time favorite movies, Wizard of Oz. And then looking for John Malkovich, being John Malkovich. I absolutely, because it had threads of the Wizard of Oz in it. And recently, Jojo Rabbit and Anything by Taika Waititi. I love him. So those are, I also loved Reds. Remember that big epic movie? I love that. So those are some of my favorite movies.
Jennifer, what would you like to say?
I would like to say thank you again for another wonderful hour of poetry. And Jim, Diane, it was so amazing to hear you. Thank you both for coming back.
Thank you.
Of course. And Harry, what's coming up next week?
Next week, we have 4 wonderful actors who live at MPTF, Corinne Conley, Helen Richmond, Tony Sawyer, Kay Wiseman. They're going to read from Diane Wachowski's Bay of Angels, which is a tribute to her love of movies. And so I'm looking forward to that. So thank you both once again. You both are very inspirational to me, and you show me your lives. And that's what I like. Your camera comes in on one person telling his or her story. And especially I like the poetry. I've always loved poetry since I was a young man. But in the time of mass media, where everything has to be so many millions of hits to honor it. But I like to honor the human being telling his or her story. And so thank you both very much. And here's Jennifer Clymer to take us home.
Thank you, guys. Hopefully we see you back here soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.